Dr. John Padfield is a business professor at Indiana University and has decades of experience working as an engineer, where he holds two patents in the automotive industry. Dr. Padfield was previously elected twice to the Indiana House of Representatives and is the creator of Business Reform, a platform where he covers pressing issues on topics relating to business, technology, and society. John, it's great to speak with you today.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you and talk to your viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. Could I ask you, what made you want to start Business Reform, and how long have you been working on this platform?
I started Business Reform in June of 2022, and I chose the name Business Reform because I have kind of seen the world and society from a couple of different perspectives. Working for industry as an engineer, my background covers working in the automotive industry, the medical device industry, and security products. So I'm very familiar working for industry. At the same time, I'm a business professor, and I'm also familiar with some of the things that some businesses do that I find exploitive. Um, just to give you one example, more and more companies are moving away from selling you a product, and now they're kind of leasing you a product, or that's what it feels like. They want to turn everything into a subscription because that's a great revenue model for them. And now we're seeing things that in my mind are ridiculous when a car maker wants to sell you a subscription to heated seats, or they want to sell you a subscription to keyless entry on your car. Things that in the past would just be you pay for it once and you're done with it. So business reform, it's really kind of putting a spotlight on business practices. My goal is to hold up as good examples the companies that are doing things well, that have good privacy policies, and also shine a light on the ones that I think are being exploitive of people. And so that's how the channel came about. And over the last year or so, I've started moving more and more into talking about privacy related issues, because I think that's one of the biggest areas where companies are exploiting people, and people don't even realize it very often. Companies are collecting a tremendous amount of data, and from the company's perspective, they'll say, well, you consented to this, but did you really? When they bury things in a hard to read, small print privacy policy that they know no one's going to read. Um, anyway, that's how business reform came about.
Yeah. And oftentimes, these large companies, if people sign up to them or choose not to sign up to them, it gets rid of something that you have to have access to be able to manage like your day-to-day life. A lot of the times, it's just like a bad situation, even if you don't want to opt in.
Absolutely. Plus, there are so many ways that companies are getting my data that I have absolutely nothing to do with. For instance, if I have given my phone number and my address and full name, date of birth, I've given that to a friend of mine. The friend of mine has put that into their phone, and then they join Facebook and they say, sure, I'll upload my contacts. Facebook now has all of my personal information, not because I gave it to them, but because somebody I know gave it to them. And it's not just Facebook. I just use them as one example, but there are many companies that, um, as a convenience, they allow you to upload all of your contacts, and nobody goes out and asks all of their friends, hey, is it okay with you if I share your information with LinkedIn, or, fill in the blank. There's a lot of companies that do this.
Yeah. And so what has the reception been like for people that have seen the content that you upload? Does it normally come across that people like didn't even know these things existed and now are aware of it because of the videos you make?
It's been a fascinating journey over the past little over 3 years. Initially, I was making videos and getting very little feedback because there just weren't that many people seeing the videos. For the first year, my videos were getting 400, 500 views. Over the last few months, that has all shifted. In early June of this year, I posted a video that generated nearly 2 million views, and my subscriber count exploded. And ever since then, my views have just gone through the roof, which I'm very happy for. I'm reaching a much bigger audience now. The feedback that I've been getting, though, has been very positive. Some people are saying, I suspected this, you have confirmed it. Other people were saying, I had no idea about this. Thank you for letting me know. But though overwhelmingly the response has been very positive. People are upset at what's going on, but they appreciate knowing about it, or in some cases, they appreciate having what they suspected validated that yes, this really is happening.
Yeah. There's this point I'll talk about later when we talk about like legislation specifically, but how one video that you uploaded talked about the recent government shutdown, and there was a bill that was about to be passed that was like 1,000 pages.
Mhm.
That was like shown for the first time like maybe a day before the shutdown was going to happen. And so you just don't have the time or the ability to even like research these things that are going to impact our lives. It's really important.
Absolutely. And that's where, over the course of my career, I started as an engineer, graduated from college with my undergraduate degree in engineering back in 1988. And I spent a couple of decades working as an engineer. And during that time, I never sat down and planned out how to get from there to where I am today. I started as an engineer, got involved in politics after spending well, let me just take a quick step back. While I was an engineer, I was working for General Motors. General Motors moved me to New York for a year to work up there, um, one of the other GM divisions. And naively, I was uh, I was in my late 20s at that point, but I was born in Indiana, raised in Indiana, and I had this really naive idea that the United States was like Indiana. It wasn't until in the early 1990s, actually 1990, that General Motors moved me to New York for a year, and I really started seeing how different life is in a different part of the United States. That kind of flipped a switch with me when I came back to Indiana after that 1 year assignment. That's when I started getting more politically involved because I saw things in New York and I thought, I don't want Indiana doing this and this. At the same time, there were a couple of things that New York did that I liked. But I started getting more politically active after coming back from New York. That led me to running for the state legislature. But I guess what I'm saying is my career progressed along these lines, and I did not anticipate at that point ever creating a YouTube channel. But where I'm at now, as I look back over the course of my career, it's like all of these things came together for a reason. I have the industry experience as an engineer, I have the legislative experience, and I have the perspective of a business professor. And I kind of feel like it's put me in a unique position to look at some of these societal issues because I can see it from multiple sides. I understand why companies are doing things that may seem unusual to a lot of people because I understand what's going on in that business and why they're making some of the decisions they do.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go and talk about surveillance capitalism. A lot of the topics
Mhm.
that you cover relate to this. What is surveillance capitalism?
Surveillance capitalism is where companies are gathering information, and I'm sure you're familiar with the old expression, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. But the idea of surveillance capitalism is I am going to make some money off of selling you a product, but I'm going to make more money by collecting information about you and selling that information to other people. So the capitalism comes from what I'm learning about you, and there are so many ways that companies do this. At one time, that really amounted to I'm going to sell you a dishwasher, you're going to fill out a warranty card, and now I'm going to have your address, your email, your phone number, um, three or four other pieces of information from that warranty card that I can now use for marketing and I can sell it to data brokers. Well, that still happens, but that is a much smaller piece of surveillance capitalism. Today, it usually comes down to here's an app that I want you to download. And I am shocked at how many companies want you to download their app. Um, you're going to McDonald's, you need our app. Why? Because when you have our app on your phone, we can tell when you're getting within 2 miles of a McDonald's. And if it's around lunchtime, we can push an ad to you. Um, but these companies are doing things not really for your benefit, although sometimes they try to disguise it as that. They're doing it for their benefit. Once you have that app, they can now associate you with your car. This has been documented. Some McDonald's have put in automated license plate readers in their drive-through. So now you go through, they get your license plate, you place an order using the app. They now can tie your license plate to the app. They can now tie your orders to your license plate. You're on vacation, you're 3 states away from where you normally live, but when you pull through the drive-through, they know what you normally order. And this is where they can start updating the display board because it's no longer a static menu that looks the same for everyone. They know what you typically order, so they can adjust the display when you get up to place your order to show the things that you normally order. If you normally get fries, if you normally upsize the size of the fries or anything else, they can custom tailor that menu board for you when you pull up there. And so the surveillance capitalism, they are adjusting what they offer you based on what they know about you. And surveillance capitalism is closely tied to a newer phenomenon called surveillance pricing. Surveillance pricing is where they will adjust prices based on what they know about you. And let me just give you a quick example of this. My wife and I had this experience about a month ago. We were both sitting on the couch. She was looking at something on Amazon on her phone, and she just copied it, put it in a text message, and sent it to me. We're sitting close together, but she said, "What do you think of this?" It was a purchase that she was thinking about making, and she verbally told me how much it cost. I clicked the link to look at it, and the price was different. And we put our phones side by side, and there's about a 10% difference in price. You know, an $18 item for her was a $20 item for me, and it was the exact same item. And she kind of looked at me like, what's going on here? And I said, I have probably bought more expensive things. Amazon thinks that I could afford something more expensive, and so they're jacking up the price on me. But it's the exact same item. It would be shipped to the exact same address, but Amazon wanted to charge me $2 more for it than what they would have charged my wife. That is called surveillance pricing, where prices are adjusted on a person-by-person basis. Amazon has been caught in the past doing this. If you access Amazon using a Mac versus using a PC, the Mac price would be higher than the PC price. Amazon got caught doing that a number of years ago, and they said this was just an experiment. We don't really do this. Well, you did it. You got caught doing it. But this is becoming more and more common that the price that I see and the price that you see for the exact same item may be different because the companies are trying to maximize their profits. They're going to make more money charging one of us more money, and that's to their benefit. It's to our loss.
Yeah. I didn't know it was that prevalent that McDonald's would be able to read someone's license plate and be able to find out their individual, preferences.
It's not common yet with McDonald's, but McDonald's has been experimenting with it. And I've read articles online that some McDonald's already have this, but they're doing it as a pilot program to see, does this really drive more sales? Is it worth the investment to do this at all McDonald's? But they have been doing the experiments already.
And so it's not an industry standard yet, but it is being implemented in a lot of like big industries. I've heard Walmart doing this as well with their products.
Online, and this started online. Places like Amazon or Walmart, they can buy information on you. They can buy browsing history. If you're looking at a Chevy and I'm looking at a Mercedes, they're going to draw an assumption about how much money do you have versus how much money do I have. Plus, they can go out and buy credit scores. They can do all types of things to assess how much money someone has. But one of the most common things they do, if they have my address, they will go look up at the U.S. Census Bureau, what is the median price house in my neighborhood? Because that is the single best predictor of somebody's income, is look at where they live, what's the median price house. And so if you live in one neighborhood, I live in another neighborhood, they are going to estimate our annual income based on where we live. Now, if they have additional information, like what type of cars are you looking at online, what type of restaurants do you go to, they will refine that number, but they can make a decent estimate of our income just by looking at our physical address. So that's been going on for years. One of the things that we're starting to see right now that most people are not aware of, this concept of customized pricing is starting to move from being purely online to being in the physical world. Kroger and Microsoft a couple of years ago did a joint press release, So this is not conspiracy theory. This was a joint press release between Microsoft and Kroger, and they were announcing that they are redefining the shopping experience. And Kroger announced, we are putting facial recognition cameras in our product shelving. And we have dynamic pricing where we can change the price on an item so that that can of beans, that box of cereal, they can press a button and change the price dynamically. And I want to stress, this is not a sinister plot by itself. There are reasons why this is a big advantage to a business. If Kroger is sitting on some inventory that is approaching the expiration date, it makes sense you would want to put it on sale to move it before it expires. So I have no problem with that. If they were just doing it to decide we're putting this on sale, rather than paying an employee to go change prices, we're just going to hit a button and change all the prices across the store. I have no problem with that. But what Kroger and Microsoft were talking about was, if this camera can look at you and say, we think that you're willing to pay $6 for this box of cereal, so it's going to be $6 for you, but the person that comes up to that cereal aisle 30 seconds later, AI decides that person's probably only willing to pay $5 for a box of cereal, and it changes the price for the next person. Most people have a problem with that. That kind of violates our innate sense of fairness, that the exact same product in the same store, you're going to charge different people different prices. To the store, oh, this is a huge moneymaker. But to the public, you're exploiting us. And the thing, when I first read about this, I thought, this doesn't make sense, because even if you change the price at the shelf, how do you know what to charge me when I get to the checkout? And that comes back to the app, or it could come back to facial recognition, that when I step up to the counter, it knows who I am. It knows what price I was shown when I put it in the cart. And now as things are being scanned at checkout, it's going to adjust the prices because it knows who I am. So there's a lot of reason I don't like stores using facial recognition on customers.
Could you talk about like what the data broker does in this process?
Oh, absolutely. Um, but let me take one step back on this. I drove into my local Lowe's. I shop there fairly regularly, but I pulled into the Lowe's parking lot and I noticed they had flock surveillance cameras at the entrance to the parking lot. And I'm not a big fan of flock. They scan not only your license plate, they also scan the make, model, color of your car, any bumper stickers that you have on your car, and that goes into a database. And I personally have a big problem with a private company scanning everyone's bumper stickers. I don't care if somebody's Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. I do not like the idea of a master database of, here is every car in the United States along with their political views, because this car had a pro-life bumper sticker and this one had a pro-choice bumper sticker. I think that's dangerous. But anyway, I pulled into the Lowe's. I saw the flock uh, surveillance camera that captures my license plate as I drove in, and it bothered me. I went ahead and shopped at Lowe's, but when I left, I came home and I went to the Lowe's website to see, did they say anything about scanning people's license plates in their parking lot, and they actually did. And then I went to the Wayback Machine to see how long has that been on the Lowe's privacy policy. This is some of that research that you mentioned earlier. When I sink my teeth into something, I do it right. So I'm going through the Wayback Machine looking at, when did Lowe's update their privacy policy to say that we may scan your license plate in our parking lot. Lowe's is doing that. And as I was going through their privacy policy, they had an option where I could access all of the information that they have about me. And so I clicked the link. I put in my name and a couple other pieces of information, but I said, I want a copy of what Lowe's knows about me. And it took about 3 or 4 days, and I got a PDF emailed to me from Lowe's, and it's about 7 pages of information on me. Now, I want to clarify for everyone, I have shopped Lowe's numerous times. I normally pay cash. On occasion, I have paid with credit card. And Lowe's has my address because one time I bought a dishwasher and I had it delivered to my house. So I I expect Lowe's to know my name, my address, my email address, and my phone number because I gave that to them. But that's it. When I got I call it my dossier, when I got that information that Lowe's knows about me, it had all of that. It had the number of children that I have. It had the ages of my children. It had my veteran status. It had my marital status. It had my hobbies. All of this information that I never once gave to Lowe's. It had details about my house, the square footage of my house, whether I had a paved or gravel driveway, whether or not I had a fireplace. About 7 pages of information about me and my house, none of which I gave to Lowe's. And so that tells me obviously Lowe's has taken my name and gone out to a data broker and bought a bunch of information about me. Now, why are they doing it? Well, two reasons. Number one, they are part of the surveillance state. Lowe's knows things about me because if they can tie my purchases to me, they can take that information and sell it to data brokers. John Padfield just bought a 50-foot garden hose. Who wants to know that? I don't know, but if Lowe's can find somebody willing to pay for that information, they'll sell it to them. So Lowe's is an active participant. In their privacy policy, they admit we purchase third-party data about people and we sell data about people. So they are an active player in the data broker business. Now, what is Lowe's doing with it besides being a data broker? Well, if they're running an ad, there may be things that they are selling that would only be of interest to people with a fireplace or may only be of interest to people that have a house that's more than 20 years old. So I'm sure they're using that information for marketing purposes, but it's just, to me, creepy that they're out buying this information without my consent. They're compiling it, they're adding to it, here's what I've purchased from Lowe's, and then they're turning around and selling that information to other people that want to know things about me. This is that whole hidden economy that most people don't even realize exists, that there are companies buying your information, adding to it, and then turning around and reselling it so that eventually there's a company out there that knows virtually everything about you because they're buying up everyone's data.
You've previously talked about how Flock Systems has been used by police departments towards law enforcement to be able to track individuals and use them
Mhm.
for other things. Could you talk about what Flock Systems does and how that can be used with law enforcement?
Well, absolutely. The United States Constitution has the Fourth Amendment, which says that um, people are secure in their persons, homes, papers, and effects, and that that information is private, and that if police want to search someone's home or they want to search a person, they need a search warrant. And warrants must be issued by courts based on probable cause, meaning if a police officer believes that you have committed a crime, they have to take whatever led them to that conclusion to a judge and say, here is why I think this person committed a crime. I want your permission to go search their house for evidence that could be used in court. And if the police officer has what's called probable cause, enough evidence to convince a judge that this person is likely guilty, then the judge will sign the search warrant. That's the way that it's supposed to work. In my opinion, Flock Safety, the company is called Flock Safety. I often refer to them as Flock Surveillance because I believe their products have much more to do with surveillance than safety. But they are basically an end run around the Fourth Amendment. Law enforcement cannot go out and search me without a search warrant. But if the police partner with a third party like Flock Safety is a private company. They don't have to honor the Fourth Amendment. They can search you. And this issue is being challenged in federal court right now. The Institute for Justice has filed a lawsuit against the city of Norfolk, Virginia. That lawsuit was filed in September 2024, and it should be going to court very soon. The city of Norfolk filed a motion to dismiss, saying this is a frivolous case. We're only using these cameras for public safety. And the federal judge said, no, I'm not dismissing this case. There's something big here that needs to be resolved in court. And Right now, it's October 2025. Sometime in the next couple of months, this case should be heard in federal court. And based on the Carpenter case from 2018, a Supreme Court decision, I am anticipating that the Institute for Justice is likely going to win that case. Anyway, getting back to your original question, what Flock Safety is doing, they have a network at last count that's somewhere around 40,000 automated license plate cameras around the country. Where I live in Columbus, Indiana, I pass about 6 of them on a daily basis. And so every time I drive past one of these cameras, that camera is recording, here is my car, it has my license plate number, here is a timestamp, here is a GPS coordinate, and that's being logged. If in the future a police officer was suspicious of me, they can put in my license plate number and they can see everywhere that I have been, because every time I pass a Flock Safety camera, there is a data point. I was here at this date, I was here at this date, and they could start tracking me. Where all have I been over the last month? Now, I want to draw a distinction here. Flock Safety says we own the cameras. When the city of Columbus, Indiana contracted with Flock, the cameras are still owned by Flock, but Flock says the police department owns the data, even though the data is sitting on Flock servers. Flock has access to that data. So this is where you get into word games sometimes. We don't own the data. No, but you have access to the data. And it's not just law enforcement. Lowe's has Flock Safety cameras. And again, Flock has access to all of that data because it's being hosted on their servers. So what you have is a private company, Flock Safety, and they have literally billions of data points per month of where people have driven, what bumper stickers they have on their car. If I put a bumper sticker on my car for a day and then take it back off, there is a record that on this date at this location, I had this bumper sticker on my car. So with this data, they can go recreate where has a person been. And we know that this has been abused. There have been 2 cases already that have resulted in law enforcement officers being fired. One was a police chief who was using Flock Safety cameras to basically stalk his ex-wife. Over the course of a couple of months, he ran her license plate 164 times to see where she was going. And then he found out who she was dating, and he started running that individual's license plate. This is a clear abuse of power, but it was an abuse of power enabled by a private company that is doing mass surveillance on the entire American public. There was another police officer who was also fired, and he was caught essentially doing the same thing. He had a romantic interest, and he was constantly running her plates to see where she was, because Flock can do this in real time. You can even set alerts. If you're a police officer, you can set an alert anytime any Flock camera sees this license plate number, send me a text message and let me know where they're at. And so this is a system that's just ripe for abuse. People will argue and say, well, this is important for safety, and there are safety benefits to it. I don't deny that. There have been cases where somebody's been kidnapped or something bad has happened and a witness saw a license plate and they were able to find the person. So I acknowledge there is an upside to it, but there's also an incredible downside to it. And I would say this would be similar to, I am against domestic violence, but I do not want cameras put inside of everyone's houses to try and catch people committing domestic violence. So anyway, this is going to a federal court, and I look forward to that. I'm optimistic that the case is going to be settled for the Institute for Justice, saying that this is an unreasonable search based on what Flock Safety is doing.
What would that mean if the Institute of Justice does win this settlement?
Great question. And that is one that I earlier mentioned the Carpenter case. The Carpenter case was a case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court 2018 or 2019. In that case, a man had apparently robbed 4 liquor stores, but the way he was caught, police went to a cell phone company and they did geofencing around the 4 liquor stores that had been robbed. Geofencing means going to the cell phone company and saying, I want to know every cell phone that was within 100 yards of this address on this date between these hours. And the cell phone company was able to say, here's all the cell phones that were present at these places. Well, 4 liquor stores were robbed. There was only 1 cell phone present at all 4 liquor stores near the time the liquor store was robbed. So the police used that as probable cause to get a search warrant to go search this individual's house. When they searched the house, they found evidence that led to his conviction. The constitutional issue was you went out and got all of those geofence, all that data without a warrant. Because remember, the Fourth Amendment says that people have a right to be secure in their papers, homes, drawing a mental blank,
Yeah.
papers, houses, and effects. Law enforcement needs a search warrant before they search you. And the constitutional issue was when you went to the cell phone companies and said, I want to know where every cell phone was during the time of these robberies, you did not have a search warrant. And the government's argument was, well, we didn't need a search warrant. That was available information. The cell phone company just gave it to us. And it went to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court disagreed. Now, it was a 5-4 decision, so that means it was a very controversial one. It was not a everyone agrees. But the majority of the Supreme Court in this 2018 or 2019 case, their quote said, the use of advanced technology to track someone for a prolonged period of time constitutes a search under the Fourth Amendment. Now, there's a couple of vague terms in there. They did not say cell phone technology. They said the use of advanced technology, facial recognition cameras, automated license plate readers. The term advanced technology is intentionally broad because the Supreme Court didn't want to just say, you can't do this, but you can do everything else. They used a broad term on purpose so that this could be applied to license plate readers as well as facial recognition, as well as technologies we might not even know about yet. They also did not specify the time. They didn't say you can't use advanced technology for more than 24 hours or more than 30 days. They said the use of advanced technology for a prolonged period of time constitutes a search. Again, they were very careful in their wording and they used very broad terms on purpose. If they had said the use of advanced technology for more than 7 days is unconstitutional, then it would be standard practice for police to do it for 6 days at a time, but do it for 6 days, take an hour off, do it for another 6 days. So the Supreme Court intentionally used some vague terminology. The Institute for Justice is arguing, and I agree with them, putting 40,000 cameras across the United States, or in the city of Norfolk, Virginia, putting 170 cameras in Norfolk, you have established a network of cameras that no one can travel anywhere without being picked up on a camera. And why did they choose to sue Norfolk when there are literally thousands of communities doing this? I believe it's because of the police chief in Norfolk. The police chief in Norfolk, at a press conference, he was bragging about how effective these cameras are. And I'm paraphrasing just because I can't remember the exact quote. But the police chief basically said, we've put up a curtain of cameras and no one can travel anywhere without us knowing about it. Well, thank you for confirming what we already knew. But I believe that is why Norfolk was chosen as the test case. You have admitted, an authority figure has admitted, no one can travel anywhere without us knowing about it. Now, going back to the Carpenter case, the use of advanced technology to monitor people for a prolonged period of time, that sure sounds like what the city of Norfolk is doing with flock cameras. And that's why I'm very optimistic that the judge is going to come back and the jury will come back and side with the Institute for Justice. Getting back to your question, and I didn't mean to take off on a tangent, but getting back to your question about what is likely to come from this, there are a couple of things that could come from this. Probably the most extreme, and I would say probably the least likely, is for the court to say these cameras are unconstitutional, take them down. That's an extreme position. I would say it's within the realm of possibility, but very, very unlikely. What we may see is um, limits on how long can this data be stored. Flock claims that they only store the data for 30 days, but they also claim this isn't our data, it's the customer's data. So if the city of Norfolk wants that data for a year, does that just mean that after 30 days it gets backed up on a different server? Don't know. But the court could come back and say, if you're looking for a missing child, you don't need to go back 30 days ago, 24 hours, 48 hours. This is the longest you can keep this data. So that's one possibility. There could be restrictions saying that from this point forward, Flock can keep collecting this data, but you must have a warrant in order to access the data. So there's a couple of different things the courts could do, and that is so uncertain. I'm not going to make any predictions. My one prediction is I think the Institute for Justice will prevail in this case. But what you're asking about is what is the remedy? What will the court order to be done? And that I think is wide open. I'm really not sure what to expect.
Yeah. So I think a common thought about privacy itself is that people think, it's really great to have, but it's not absolutely necessary for the average individual to have privacy in the way that, protects us from these things happening. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Privacy is important for so many reasons that a lot of people don't think about. And probably the biggest myth in privacy is, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why does it matter? Or there's many variations on that. If you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care who's watching you? I think that that's the absolute wrong question. If you take your 6-year-old daughter to the park and there's some creepy guy with a telephoto lens taking picture of your daughter, are you okay with that? She's not doing anything wrong. You shouldn't care about who's watching her. No, it's not about what I'm doing. It's about what's that other person doing. And so if Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, if somebody is collecting all of my data, it's not that I'm worried about doing something wrong. It's me questioning, why do you want this information? I don't view it as I'm doing something wrong. I view it as consent. I'm married, so this doesn't directly apply to me. But if a single person goes out on a date with another single person, in my mind, it's up to those two individuals how much they want to share with each other and when. Where have you lived? Who have you dated? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a matter of consent. When I choose to share this information with this person under these circumstances, that should be up to them. It shouldn't be up to a third party to say, hey, would you like this person's life history? I have it and I'll sell it to you. That's something I have more of a problem with.
I'd like to move to legislation and talk about things that are going on with the government today. Could you talk about what you've mentioned these in your videos about age verification? Could you
Mhm.
talk about what this is and how this is being used?
This is a touchy topic, and I don't want to come across as being oblivious to the other side, because many of these issues, there are two sides to them, but one side really seems to be dominant. And this really got started in the UK, putting it in the news. It had already been going on in some US states. The UK just kind of added fuel to it and made it a bigger topic. The idea of age verification, there is material that most people would generally agree is inappropriate for and or harmful to children. Um, Probably the most common one is adult websites, but there are other types of information, gambling websites, firearm related websites. Um, there are things that, if here in the United States, if a person physically wants to walk into a bar, they may do an ID check because it is illegal for people under 21 to go into a bar. So the idea of age verification is there is information on the internet, whether it's alcohol related, firearms related, adult content related. Today, in many places, there's no age verification. Children could get access to that. And so there are states, I think Texas was among the first, but now I think there's probably 18 or 20 states across the country that have passed state laws regarding age verification, meaning if you have certain types of websites, you must do some form of age verification to make sure that you're not giving access to this material to somebody that's underage. Um, the UK got on board with this. They went pretty wild with it, because the term they use is content harmful to children. And my first big red flag is, give me a definition of that. Uh, because like I said, there are some things like adult content that most people would agree this is not something that children should have access to. But there was fighting going on between Hamas and Israel. There was some graphic video coming out of some of the news reporting of people that had been injured. Should children be able to see the news if the news includes images of someone who's been harmed from a rocket attack? And these are serious issues that we could have a real debate. Some parents may say, no, I don't want my children seeing that. Other people would say, yes, this is really going on. Um, and then you get into a matter of degree. Are you talking about somebody who's been blown in half and it's extremely gruesome? Or are you talking about somebody who is bleeding because they were hit by some shrapnel? So you get into this matter of degree. But the bigger issue is, once age verification has been passed, now you've taken the internet and you've split it in two. This is accessible to anyone. This, whatever this is, adult content, alcohol content, firearm content, certain news stories, this is behind an age verification wall, and nobody has access to it until they can prove that they are over a certain age. Here's the big problem with that. A person who's in their 40s, legally, they can access any of this content, but maybe this is content they don't want recorded, that I was looking at this content for whatever reason, whether it's adult content or whether it's politically sensitive content. If I have to verify my age, you're not just verifying your age, you're also verifying your identity. And that is what a lot of people have a problem with. If it were purely age verification, if there was some way I could just prove to you over the internet I am over this age, because you don't need to know my age. The only question is, am I over this threshold? So if there was some way of proving I'm over this threshold, I have no problem whatsoever with that. But if you need my date of birth, that's a different matter, because it doesn't take much information to figure out who I am. There were only so many people born on my birthday in the United States. If you know my date of birth, I went from one of 330 million people to one of 10,000 people. If you know what state I was born in, now I went from 1 in 10,000 people to 1 in 200 people. So my problem with age verification, if it could be done where it was purely, are you over this threshold or below this threshold, I have no problem with it. When it comes to, you have to prove to me who you are, now we're opening up a different door. Now, what were you doing on this website? Why were you looking up those symptoms on WebMD? Why were you looking at this content? And now we're getting into a realm of surveillance that could really be misused in the future.
Yeah, I think that also goes into the idea of social credit scores being implemented. Can you talk about social credit scores as well and how that ties into this?
Yes. First thing I want to do is clarify what is meant by social credit scores. Most people are familiar with financial credit scores. In the United States, there's TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. These are companies that collect financial information about you and give you a score. That score is typically between, I think, 300 and 850. If your score is in the 800s, it means um, you are a very good credit risk. Very, very high likelihood you will repay money that you borrow. If your score is down 350, it's a big red flag. Most lenders don't want to loan you money because um, you're a credit risk. There's a too great of a chance that you would not repay the money. So that's a financial credit score, and that is based on your financial history. How much debt do you have? How much money do you make? What is your reputation and your history for repaying money that you've borrowed? So that's a financial credit score. The idea of a social credit score, it already exists, but it is not all unified yet. And what I mean by that, I could show you one of my social credit scores. I have the Uber app. And on Uber, every time I have taken an Uber, the driver has the opportunity to rate me. And I have a score that is an average of all of the ratings that Uber drivers have given me. I have contributed to their scores. That is a form of a social credit score. Now, that is um, a very limited score. It is used by Uber. And if a driver saw that I needed a ride, but I had a really poor score, they may decide to not come get me because they don't know if I'm going to be argumentative, potentially violent, or something like that. They may decide I don't want to go pick that person up because they have a very low score. Same thing with Airbnb. I have used Airbnb before. I've left reviews for the property owners that I have rented from. They've left reviews for me. That is a form of a social credit score. If I had a really low score, other people who own properties in the Airbnb platform may say, I don't want to rent to this person because they have a really low score, meaning they may have done damage to somebody else's property. So that the concept of a social credit score is similar to your financial credit score. It is a number that represents your risk. If you have a high score, people are going to be more accepting. People are going to be more trusting. They will rent their property. They will come pick you up. If you have a low score, they won't. The network is being put in place right now for a much broader social credit score. China is the leader in this right now. And even in China, this is not a national program. This is something I've spent a good bit of time looking at. In China, this is really being done more at like a province type level or a city level. Basically, they're experimenting, trying to find out what works, what data should be included in calculating the score, and then what do we do based on that score to basically force people to behave the way that we want them to. So let me just give you a couple of examples of what has been done in China. And again, this is not across all of China. This is in certain regions. But some of the things that could factor into your score. Have you said anything anti-government on social media? Because if so, your score is going to plummet. Have you been caught littering? Now, I'm not in favor of littering, and there's some people that always go to the extreme. Oh, you think that's okay? No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying, do we really want to rate people based on this? But minor infractions of jaywalking, littering, oh, that could lower your score. Doing anything that annoys people around you could lower your score. And then as your score starts dropping, especially, things that are going to be a serious hit to your score is anything that the government views as being a threat to them, saying negative things about your political leaders. When your score starts dropping, pressure starts being applied because when your score drops to a certain point, your kids are not going to college. Um, they they have no reservations about penalizing your family for what you do because that's a great leverage point to force you to do what they want if you know that you're putting your family at risk. So your score gets low enough, your kids might not go to college. There are thresholds. Your score drops below this, you're not taking public transportation. You're not going to fly anywhere. Um, One of the more creative things, and I say that half jokingly, but this is real. This is not a theoretical. This really happens. Imagine you and I are in China, and I have a really bad social credit score for whatever reason. And here's the point: it doesn't matter why it's low. Is it because I'm a habitual litterer, or is it because I have said things in public against the government? But if I have a low social credit score and you go to call me, you dial my number, and before my phone even rings, you get a pre-recorded message warning you that I have a low score. The message may say that I'm an untrustworthy person, and press one if you still want to talk to me, or you can hang up right now and your score doesn't get lowered. But by the way, if you do talk to me, your score is going to get lowered because you're now associated with somebody that's untrustworthy. It is a control mechanism that's going to isolate people that have been deemed um, to be a threat. And it could mean that you get booted off social media, could mean that you get isolated because anyone that associates with you, it's going to lower their social credit score. It is a huge club to beat people with because you're now isolating them. Nobody wants to talk to them because they don't want to risk their own social credit score.
And so that's something that's being developed right now in the United States as well. It's existed in China and it's being implemented there provincially, but
Yeah,
it's starting to happen here as well, or it's just like theoretical.
what I see, like I said, there are narrow instances of it already being here, like
Yeah.
Uber, like Airbnb, and I understand those. If I participated in Airbnb as a host, I would want to know who I'm renting to.
Mhm.
So I understand it, but what's being formed right now is the infrastructure for tying it all together. And that causes me great concern. Larry Ellison, who in September of this year became the richest man in the world when Cisco's stock price spiked, he briefly was richer than Elon Musk. And right now they are number one and number two. Who's number one varies day by day depending on price of stock. But Larry Ellison has made some statements in the very recent past about how everyone is going to be on their best behavior because we're going to have AI monitoring camera feeds and we are recording and reporting everything that's going on. And that is almost a verbatim quote. He made this comment in a stockholder call. This would have been, I believe, September 2024, but it was a public stockholder call. And he made those statements about in the future, everyone's going to be on their best behavior because we're recording and reporting everything. And, if my next door neighbor said that, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But when the richest man in the world at the time says that, and he is the chairman of the board at Cisco, a massive software company that is contributing to the development of this type of infrastructure, I take it much more serious.
Yeah. And so Cisco and I think Oracle and other companies like Palantir, are they the ones that are developing the infrastructure to create these social credit scores?
Yes. Palantir, they are. Um, I made a video on Palantir about a month ago. It's October now, so this would have been somewhere in September. I made a video on Palantir in 2025 as of September. So we're only 9 months into 2025. Palantir had already been awarded 51 federal contracts. One of those contracts was a massive contract that the Trump administration hired Palantir to compile all of the data the federal government has on US citizens. And this is something most people haven't really thought much about, but the Internal Revenue Service knows everything about your tax history for your entire life. Um, how much money did you make in 2012, 2013, et cetera? They know that information. Department of Labor has information about you, about where you've worked. The Center for Disease Control has information about you with what vaccinations you've received. Department of Education has information about you, about what college you went to. So the United States federal government has a tremendous amount of information on people. U.S. State Department, they have a record of every time you've left the United States because of the passports. So the United States federal government has a tremendous amount of information on people. but it's held in different databases across many different departments. Palantir was given the contract to take all of this information, we're talking terabytes or petabytes of data, put it into one database that is easily searchable so that if I put in your name or your social security number, I do that one time and now I can see here is your life story. Here's the hospital where you were born. Here's your immunization schedule from the time you were born. Here's where you've worked. Here's the taxes you paid. Here's the property you've owned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Palantir is compiling all this information to make it easily searchable. And then AI can go through and start looking for outliers. Most people only move this often. You have moved more often than most people. Why is that? And it may not be anything nefarious, but AI can go through and start looking for outliers. Well, most people that do this, it's almost like Amazon. You go buy a product on Amazon and they're trying to upsell you. People that buy this often buy this too. Maybe it's batteries for the product you just purchased. Well, AI is going to be going through looking at all of our personal sensitive data saying most people that earn this much money drive this type of car and go here on vacation, but you're an outlier. You don't do that. Why? And they're basically using that, trying to detect any type of fraud or criminal behavior. And again, I believe it gets into Fourth Amendment issues of, do you have probable cause to start combing through my life history? Or are you on a fishing expedition trying to find something? Um, to me, that's a very scary slope to start sliding down.
And Palantir, when they were first founded, I think a year after that, the CIA invested $2 million dollars into their company.
Yes,
Could you talk about the connection between like government intelligence agencies and big tech companies in the US?
yes. Again, like so many things, there's two sides to this. The government is not necessarily good at developing technology. Um, and so certain partnerships make absolute sense. A company that excels at a certain type of technology that meets a need that the government has, there's an obvious connection where the government might want to contract with somebody who has that expertise. But speaking specifically about Palantir, go back into the late 1990s, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk get together and they start a company known as PayPal. And PayPal was the first of its kind. They were handling handling payments for the emerging e-commerce sites. If you go back to the 1970s, 1980s, you have big stores. You know, at that time it was Sears and Kmart. Walmart was coming on, but you had big stores that had relationships with Visa and MasterCard to handle credit card transactions. We get into the 1990s, and now you're having the e-commerce, the birth of e-commerce. Small companies, we're not talking Sears and Walmart. We're talking, somebody that's selling books from their bedroom. Small companies are starting up. They want to be able to accept credit cards, and Visa and MasterCard don't want anything to do with them because the volume of business they're bringing is a tiny, tiny fraction of what Sears or Kmart were doing. So Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they saw a need. They developed PayPal to be a middleman between private companies that are really small and the big players like Visa and MasterCard. So they became very successful. They were the first. They have many competitors today, companies like Stripe and others, but um, PayPal was the first. As PayPal grew, PayPal became a target for scammers. People trying to figure out PayPal is handling billions of dollars worth of payments. How do we steal some of it? And as PayPal became a target, Musk and Thiel and some other people, they were the face of the company, but they started working on anti-scamming technology. How can we figure out which transactions are legitimate, which transactions are fraudulent so that we don't lose money? And they were very successful. They came up with some good anti-fraud measures that they built into PayPal. When Peter Thiel and Elon Musk sold PayPal, and went on to do other things. Peter Thiel walked away with a lot of money from selling PayPal and a lot of ideas about how to detect fraud. Shortly after 9/11, Peter Thiel came up with the idea of, could we fight terrorism by looking at financial analysis, spotting things, using some of this technology that he helped develop at PayPal. And that was how Palantir got started. The name Palantir comes from Lord of the Rings. There were these seeing stones, is what they were called. They're about the size of a bowling ball, but they were magic. Um, if I had one of these bowling balls in my house and you had one in your house, they basically worked like a Zoom call. We could talk to each other over them. I could see what's going on thousands of miles away from me by using one of these stones. And so that is what Peter Thiel named his company after. A Palantir was one of these stones that allowed you to see what's going on thousands of miles away. He created his company and he started advertising that what we can do is we can analyze data, we can look for anomalies in data. And now, if there is somebody doing something shady, we can have a good chance of catching them at it. 1 year after Palantir was created, the CIA has a investment branch called NQTel, and NQTel invested $2 million into Palantir. This would have been, I want to say, around 2003, 2004. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but early 2000s, CIA invested $2 million in Palantir. With that money, they were able to expand. By the late 2000s, they're winning government contracts, and the rest is history. The company grew both with government contracts and with private companies. But the real turning point for Palantir was last year's election. Palantir's stock has about tripled in value over the last 11 months. Since the 2024 presidential election, their stock has gone up roughly 3 times what it was worth previously.
Palantir is a company that people may have only gotten to know within the last year, but it seems like they've had a long trajectory, especially working with the government, since 2003 for, more than 20 years. And so a lot of the technology that comes from big tech or the ones that are public facing, like what we're seeing with AI today, it's been developed and researched in partnership with government intelligence agencies or the Department of Defense for, a long time before it becomes public facing. Things like the internet or GPS or hypersonics or drones and now AI as well. Could you share your thoughts on this? How people only really come to know about these things after they've already been developed for like decades, oftentimes, and like what could be happening now that we might not know until 20 years from now.
Oh, you excellent question. The I'm going to go back in time to lay a foundation before I address that question. In the Declaration of Independence, written clear back in the 1700s, Thomas Jefferson said that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. To me, that is an absolutely foundational point. For a government to be legitimate, it must be operating with the consent of the governed, which raises a whole issue of government secrecy. How can I consent to what I don't know about? If the government is off doing things and I have no idea about it, how can you possibly say I consented to that? And your question really speaks to this. What is Palantir doing that we don't know about? Well, obviously, I can't answer that directly because if we don't know about it, I don't know either. But the bigger issue is, what is the government working on that the public may not consent to? And it's being done, quote unquote, in our name, but not with our permission because we don't know about it. I think some of the Edward Snowden leaks in 2013 fall into that realm. When Edward Snowden produced documentation that directly refuted what drawn a mental blank. I believe it was Clapton, the former director of national intelligence, lied under oath to Congress. when he was asked, is the NSA doing bulk collection of data on millions of Americans? And his response, and I've put this in a video, his response was, not intentionally. Bull. You don't accidentally collect phone records of millions of people. So his statement that we don't do this intentionally, that if it ever happens, it's small scale and it's inadvertent. Bull, that's a lie. You're under oath and you just committed perjury in front of the United States Senate when you lied to Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. So he lied about it. To me, that is as black and white as it gets. And he was asked after the fact, this was several months later, after Edward Snowden leaked information from the NSA and proved that he was lying. He was asked about his former statement under oath, and his answer was, and I quote, I gave the least dishonest answer I could think of. I'm sorry. I have been deposed before in a lawsuit. I was not the one being sued, but I was a witness. And they did not ask me to raise my hand and swear to give the least dishonest answer I could think of. My oath was, I will tell the truth. And that was the oath that the former DNI took before he testified to Congress, and he lied. But he did not get in any trouble for that. Edward Snowden, who told the truth, although he violated some rules to do it, he's been in exile ever since. Long answer to a short question. The National Security Agency was clearly doing things that the American public did not know about. I suspect the vast majority of the public did not support. Therefore, we did not consent to it, but they were doing it anyway. Try and bring this all back to your original question. We know that we know what Palantir is good at. They are now a publicly traded company. They went public around 2011, 2012. But we can go back, we can look at their stockholder reports. We know what they excel at. They are an AI company. They take massive amounts of information. They integrate it. They analyze video streams. One of the more controversial things that they do, and Alexander Karp, he and Peter Thiel were the co-founders of Palantir. Alexander Karp is the CEO of Palantir, and he has made some controversial statements talking about kill chain. And kill chain is a term when a drone is flying over a territory using high-res cameras to look for people, and they find a target. Could be a building, could be a vehicle, could be an individual. But the drone uses a camera, identifies a potential target, flags it so that someone can make a decision. Do we want to launch a missile and take out that target? That's referred to as the kill chain. And Alexander Karp has made comments about how much more efficient the kill chain is because we can analyze in seconds and make that a much streamlined decision-making process to drop a missile on something. And that's what he has said publicly. We know that they are into AI. We know that they are into all types of data analysis and data collection. That's kind of the reputation of the company. And when a company is involved in taking lives, especially as callously as Alexander Karp discusses it in some of the interviews, it makes people a little uncomfortable to think this is the same company that's going to be taking everything the federal government knows about me and analyzing it. So it makes sense that the government partners with private companies that have expertise, but it also makes people very uncomfortable when some of those companies have a reputation of being very callous in the way that they make decisions and the way that they talk about those decisions.
Yep, exactly. And for Palantir, with these kill chains, I remember in one of your videos you talked about how Google tried to implement AI technology into weapon systems, and they were prevented from doing so because of the large internal work, like internal employees in Google. They told Google that they didn't want to support this, and so I think 4,000 employees signed a document saying that we will not, you know, work on any technology used to create weapons systems. And so
Yes.
Google didn't develop this, but then afterwards, Palantir was awarded these contracts to be able to develop these AI systems. And so I wanted to ask, I think individual activism has a lot of power in preventing injustice in the things that we develop or the way that we implement them in our day-to-day lives or the way that, data and AI is used by governments or technology companies. But if one company can develop and carry out these contracts instead of another one, like where does that individual collective power go then if it can just happen for somebody else?
Google initially took an 18-month contract to take some of their image recognition software, because if you look at things like Google Photos, they have the ability to look at, if you have an Android, Google has the AI that can look at every image on your phone, so that if you're looking for a picture of a pet or you're looking for a picture of a friend, it can go through literally thousands of images on your phone and find what you're looking for. Google took an 18-month contract to work on Project Maven, which was a Department of Defense project that was trying to put more AI into drones, so that when I have a live feed coming from a camera on a drone, you could recognize people or you could recognize potential targets. And Google signed up for that. They took the 18-month contract. As soon as they did and employees started finding out about it, employees were not supportive of that. And as you mentioned, around 4,000 employees signed a petition to Google's leadership saying, we do not want to be a part of this. A couple of senior people resigned from Google in protest saying, I do not want to be associated with this. And Google made a decision: we will complete this 18-month contract, but we are going to decline the follow-on contract that was going to be a much more lucrative contract. When Google said we are not going to continue beyond this initial 18-month contract, that's when Palantir swooped in, picked up the contract, and ran with it. So your point is very valid. What good does it do for people to speak up when there's always somebody else out there that's going to take it? I would argue that there's still a lot of power in it, because number one, silence does imply consent. Maybe not in a legal standpoint, but if nobody objects, I made a video on this about the spiral of silence. If something's going on in society and I do not speak up because I don't want to be seen as the outcast, the outsider. So one side of this issue is very vocal. I disagree with them, but I don't say anything. Other people are going to say, well, nobody's objecting to this. This must be the popular opinion. Everyone must agree because no one's speaking up. It doesn't take a whole lot of people to speak up and say, I disagree, to embolden other people to say, so do I. But what happens with the spiral of silence, if I don't speak up because I don't want to be perceived as out of the mainstream, and it's risky. There is a societal risk to being the contrarian. Everyone agrees with this except for me. I serve in the faculty senate at my university, and there was a vote that came up, and it was something I felt very strongly about. When they voted, it was a voice vote. When they voted, all in favor say aye, and everyone spoke up. All opposed, nay, nay. Every head in the room turned and looked at me. But I disagreed with the particular issue being debated, and I wanted it recorded. It would have been so easy for me to just not say anything. I certainly wasn't going to say yes, but I could have been quiet and nobody would have turned and looked at me. But I wanted it recorded. There was one no vote. And so anyway, coming back to this idea about the Google employees, the fact that they spoke up, the fact that they signed a petition, it basically put a marker down. There is opposition to this. And their opposition led to Google's leadership saying, we're going to pull out of this. That sends a message. Now, the fact that another company is ready to swoop in and pick up that contract, that's a separate issue. But I think that a public good was done by all of the individuals that were brave enough to sign a petition and to speak up and say, we do not agree with this. Uh, I don't expect to get my way on everything, but if I disagree with something that I care about, I will speak up about it. Doesn't mean I'm going to go off and do something dumb or turn violent or anything of that nature, but I at least want my voice heard that this is not unanimous. And whether I stand alone or whether I am the first of many, I do want it recorded. I do not consent to this.
Yep. I completely agree. And I don't want it to come across how um the idea that we shouldn't have hope for the actions that we, commit to because something else might happen. I feel like that's a really dangerous way to think about these things. And with the spiral of silence and the idea that silence is consent, it only really benefits the companies or the people or the entities that are causing these injustices for people to be silent on these things. And so I have a whole section,
100%
yeah,
agree.
I have a whole section about being hopeful about the future and like what people can do. The next topic I wanted to talk about was about cash because you've talked about this a lot with your videos as well. It looks like we're moving towards a cashless society with a lot of payments being done electronically. What does this mean for the average consumer, and why would this be a concern?
Oh, I could go off for hours on this question. It's a great topic. When we think about what um, cash is a means of exchange. And if we go way, way back in history, you raise cows, I raise chickens, and we do trade. It's bartering. I have something of value, you have something of value, and we trade. And that works fine when you're in a really, really tiny rural community. But as society gets more complex, as society grows, that breaks down because now I have a skill that doesn't mean anything to you. You don't need what I have to offer. And now it gets really complex. I have to go trade whatever I'm good at with somebody else to get what they have so I can trade with you. It just breaks down. So cash is a means of exchange. I get paid by my employer for what I do. You get paid by your employer for what you do. If I have something that you want to buy, we've all agreed that cash has value and I can set a price. And, we're no longer into trading goods and services. We're into trading cash, which is a representation of what we've earned. Now, what happens when that becomes electronic? Well, several things. Number one, there is now records of everything. And there is now, we've taken what used to be you and me having a connection. You're going to give me cash. I'm going to give you whatever it is that you're buying from me, my used car, my used computer. But it's just a two-person transaction. And if it's my used computer, you're going to give me cash. I'm going to give you the used computer, and that's it. We don't have to go record this with the clerk's office. We don't have to go tell Google. We don't have to go tell anyone else. It's a private transaction. As soon as this moves from being a cash transaction into a non-cash transaction, you write me a check. Well, now we've involved the bank, and the bank knows that you gave me $600 for something. But the bank knows because it came out of your account and went into my account. So now we have brought in a third party. That third party is now keeping records, and that third party has the ability to say no. If for some reason, I had a low social credit score, they could say, I'm sorry, Ruben, but we're not going to honor this check. We don't like John. Let me give you one illustration of this. This goes back about 4 years ago. There was what was called the Freedom Convoy in Canada. A bunch of truck drivers who were opposed to a particular immunization mandate. They were refusing that. They were essentially being told you can't work because sitting alone in the cab of a truck, you might catch something or give something to somebody. Um, they had a mandate that they didn't like, and they formed a convoy. They went to Ottawa, but they had expenses. They were in Ottawa. They needed food. They needed diesel fuel to keep their trucks running. And I tried to send them money because I believed in their cause. I went to GoFundMe and tried to send them money. And GoFundMe decided, initially, they decided not only are we not going to give this money to the truck drivers, but we're going to pick a cause that we believe in and we're going to give the money to them instead, which infuriated me and everyone else, that you're not giving the money to who we sent it to, and you're getting ready to give it to somebody that we do not support. And I think their lawyers finally talked them into, no, give this money back to the people that donated it because you're going to get sued into oblivion if you give it to somebody else. So GoFundMe did back down from that initial position, but they held on to the money for, I think it was about 30 days before they refunded it, basically as an attempt to prevent me from getting my money back and trying to give it to the truck drivers through a different platform. Long story short, though, I tried to give money to Canadian truck drivers, and a third party blocked that because they did not want to be associated with the truck drivers, kind of like a social credit score, but it wasn't an official credit score. It was just, we do not support them. We are not going to enable other people to support them. So we're not letting this happen. My point is, as we move away from cash, we are giving control to companies like GoFundMe, like Bank of America, like PayPal, and we are giving control to these companies to decide who are we able to give money to. And Bank of America in particular, they have deplatformed religious organizations. There is a group, I believe it was called the Second Timothy Foundation, but it's a religious group. They train ministers who are going to be missionaries and go into other countries. And after having an account with Bank of America for a number of years, it's either Bank of America or Chase. I think it was Bank of America. But after having an account with them for several years, that religious organization was notified effective immediately, your account's canceled. We are no longer going to allow people to donate to your cause through your website because we are canceling your account. So the point is, as we move away from cash, number one, we're giving up all privacy because a cash transaction is a private transaction. The second thing is we're also giving up autonomy because now we are relying on a third party to complete this transaction. And if that third party doesn't like me or they don't like you, they can say, no, we are not going to transfer this money from you to that person because we don't want to be associated with that person. So I have a real problem with companies that are moving away from cash. Now, it's a very popular thing. I believe 30 of 32 NFL stadiums have gone cash free over the last couple of years. And there are reasons for that. It's not that the NFL is trying to violate your privacy. For the NFL, they are in it for a different reason. And it's not just the NFL. A lot of concert venues are doing this. I went to a professional bull riding event in Nashville, Tennessee a couple of months ago. They are cash free. But what these companies are doing, they're looking at it as, what are people's buying habits? If I go to a concert, I go to professional bull riding, I want to buy a $40 item. If I pull out cash, I'm probably just buying that $40. But if they don't accept cash and I have to put it on a credit card, well, I'll go ahead and take that $40 item and give me that $25 item too. There have been numerous academic studies that say people spend more when they're spending on a credit card. Psychologically, it is painful for me to hand you six $20 bills. But if I'm just signing a paper that says $120 on it, that doesn't psychologically hurt me as bad as handing you six $20 bills. So you see a lot of businesses embracing cash-free venues because it's less labor for them. They don't have to pay someone to count money. It's faster, assuming that their technology is working because they don't have to make change. And their customers are much more likely to spend more money if they're paying by credit card rather than paying by cash. So there's lots of reasons why companies want to go cash-free. But as an individual, I want to maintain my ability to pay cash. And so anyhow, I feel very passionate on this one. We have to protect our ability to pay cash. Otherwise, we're giving up all financial privacy, and we're allowing third parties to dictate what we can and can't do with our money.
Yeah. And so the third parties that benefit, it's typically big business, it's big government, and I think one other entity. Who
Big
benefits?
finance.
Yeah. How
Yep.
prevalent are these cashless systems? Are there like they're currently being developed, but like how common is it to see a cashless system in, day-to-day transactions?
It's becoming increasingly common. Um, as I mentioned, NFL stadiums, the last I read, 30 out of 32 NFL stadiums have already gone cashless. From what I've read, about 50% of concert venues have gone cashless. And we're starting to see more and more private businesses saying that we don't accept cash. Um, Senator John Fetterman introduced a bill in the U.S. Senate that would require any company that accepts in-person payments to accept cash up to a maximum of $500. So, the car dealership doesn't have to accept $20,000 cash, but if I'm going into a Walmart to make a purchase, the law would say any business that accepts in-person payments must accept cash. I am really hoping that that bill gets turned into law. A companion bill has been introduced in the House. Both bills were assigned to committee and have stalled. And I personally suspect that's because there's too many people in the banking industry do not want that bill to become law. And they have probably put some pressure on the committee chairman to make sure that that bill never gets a hearing. In terms of prevalence, it's growing. I can't give you a prediction of uh, the rate of growth, but it's something that as I'm seeing more and more stores saying that we don't accept cash, I really, really encourage people to speak up. I know that it's not the cashier's decision, but the cashier needs to hear from the customer because customers don't get a chance to talk to the store manager very often. They definitely don't get a chance to talk to the CEO. And so you don't have to be mean about it, but I really, really encourage people make it known to the cashiers, we do not like this policy. We will stop shopping here if you don't change this. The cashiers can pass the message on to the store manager. The store manager can pass it on, but this is one of those things you don't want to go quietly into the night on this issue. And so I really encourage people speak up, let the people at the store know, let your coworkers know, I no longer shop at such and such because they don't take cash. But this is one that we really need to take a stand on.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. I remember last year, or actually this year, around like winter time, I went snowboarding with some friends for the first time, and we went to the ski lodge, and I think it costed maybe $120 for the day. And I tried paying in cash, and they said no, we're cashless completely. And so I think what happens, the way that this is being implemented on the like in the day to day, is that large organizations like ski lodges or big companies that aren't like on a national level, they'll be offered better benefits by going cashless from their payment providers than for keeping cash going on. Like I think each transaction currently, for a credit card to be used, they get like 2 to 3%, the credit card company, from that transaction. And so for that credit card company to go to these organizations, they can say, we'll give you a discount. Maybe it's 2.75% instead of 3%. And over time, that adds up to a lot of money, but you have to get rid of cash from your company. And so that's how it's being implemented, at least I think.
I believe that you are exactly on target with that. The the rate that credit card companies charge businesses for handling credit card transactions, as you said, it's typically in the 2 to 3% range. And that is a negotiable number, but one of the big factors is volume. If you're a $10,000 a month business versus you're a $200,000 a month business, you're going to get more favorable rates as the volume increases. And so when they say, "Hey, get rid of cash," that's going to double the amount of volume, and you're going to save an extra 0.25% on your transactions. That's real money. That adds up pretty quickly. Plus, the other side is you can raise your prices because people don't object as much when they're paying by credit card as if they do when they're paying by cash. In the video that I made on this, I talked about the uh, professional bull riding event that I went to in Nashville, Tennessee a couple of months ago. Their prices, in my opinion, are absolutely ridiculous. Um, they have a $10 bottle of water, and the $10 bottle of water makes that $16 can of beer sound reasonable. And then you have the person taking the bottle of water out of the refrigerator wants a tip for taking a bottle of water out of the refrigerator. And all of a sudden, between the tax and then throw on the uh, tip and things like that, you're buying a $14 bottle of water. If you had to pull out a $10 bill and 4 ones for that bottle of water, I suspect more people would say, I'm not that thirsty, forget it. But when you just have to tap your card, well, hey, give me a pretzel to go with that. Now you're out $30 for a pretzel and a bottle of water, but people don't care because what you're really doing is you're disconnecting. Here is the debt that I'm taking on, but it doesn't feel like it because money did not pass through my hand. And that's a very dangerous thing. We're starting to see a rise in buy now, pay later. And these things have always existed, but they're kind of metastasizing into something a little bit different. When I think about things that I have gone into debt for in the past, and I used to make some really bad financial decisions. Credit cards, it's easy to get yourself in trouble with credit cards. I have been there myself. But the idea of buy now, pay later, when it comes to groceries, when it comes to eating out, that is something that we typically haven't seen in the past. It's one thing to go into debt to buy a house or buy a car. That's what the vast, vast majority of people do because cars and houses are so expensive. Very few people can go pay cash for it. But when it comes to, I want Uber Eats or I want Grubhub to deliver a couple of burritos to me, and I can take that $30 charge and break it into four $7.50 payments, that is incredibly dangerous. I refer to it as hacking people's minds because people are not making logical decisions. They're not making rational decisions. They're making instant gratification decisions. And for anyone that knows the Old Testament story of Jacob and Esau, two brothers, one's been out working, he comes in and he's really hungry, and his brother exploits the daylights out of him. Yeah, I got some soup here that I made, and give me your birthright and I'll give you some soup. Birthright back in the Old Testament times was a big deal. It means when your father dies, whoever has the birthright, the oldest son, they get twice as much inheritance as everyone else. So in the case of two siblings, if the father dies, you take the inheritance and divide into three. The oldest gets two, the youngest gets one. And you have a brother taking advantage of his hungry older brother who made an impulse decision. Yes, I'll give you my birthright. I'll give you an extra third of our inheritance in exchange for a bowl of soup. That's kind of what people are doing today. They're going into debt for a burrito, and they're paying outrageous fees, not just the delivery fee, but the interest rate when they're breaking this into payments. People are making some very, very poor decisions, but this technology is enabling it. And if they can't keep up on those 4 payments that they're going to be making on those burritos, that's going to negatively impact their financial credit score and in the future, possibly their social credit score.
Why do you think that buy now, pay later companies have risen so quickly in the last year as compared to like any other time?
I think there are still a lot of people struggling from the really high inflation rates that we have seen over the last few years. I know how easy it is to manipulate data. I teach graduate courses in data analytics, and there are subtle things you can do to make numbers look better or worse depending on what your goal is. Um, I believe that the inflation rate was probably a lot worse than what was officially reported because I know of some games that can be played to make it look less bad. Regardless, the United States, since the epidemic or pandemic back in 2020, we have gone through a very difficult time financially as prices skyrocketed around 2021, 2022 for a variety of reasons. I'm not saying that as a partisan statement, but prices from gasoline to food, prices have gone up dramatically. People have been hurting and people have had a lot less uh, disposable income. And during that time, as money is really tight, more people are tempted to put things on a payment plan than what they would have done in the past. And so I kind of view it as companies are taking advantage of a market need. Um, People want instant gratification rather than going to the store and buying something that is still expensive but cheaper than eating out. People have made some short thinking or short term thinking decisions. I don't feel like going out. I'll just order in, and then they're paying a lot of money on delivery fees. And companies are stepping in saying, "Hey, we'll loan you that money. You don't have money for this today. We'll loan it to you." And the difference between this and a bank, banks are more regulated. If I want to go to a bank and take out a $5,000 loan, there are laws around that. But a lot of these apps that are popping up allowing the instant micro loans, this is basically a $30 loan for dinner. A lot less regulation around that, and it's attracting a lot of companies. But in my opinion, they are very exploitive. People are making some very short thinking decisions, not realizing um, this money that I'm spending today, I'm going to be paying for over the next 4 months, which means next month I'm going to be short on money as well because I'm paying for this month's burritos.
I think that a lot of the things that we've talked about, the different topics, they're really important to know, but they're more important to act on. How can people lobby the representatives to on issues relating to privacy or maintaining cash? Like, how can people lobby the representatives to really hear them out on these pressing issues?
Great question. And I so agree with you. We are living in kind of a dark time. There's a lot of negative things going on around us. We can't get discouraged because the worst thing we could do is just throw up our hands in frustration and say it's never going to get any better. I'm not going to do anything. Anyone that does that, you're a part of the problem. I don't know any simpler way to put it. You have to maintain this balance, be aware of the problem, but not get overwhelmed by it. And so that means we have to keep looking for solutions. And when I look historically at things that have happened in this country, um, the idea of physical slavery has been around since Old Testament times. It goes back thousands of years. Get into 1860s America, and it took a civil war to end slavery in the United States, but it was ended. And if you go back to the 1840s, the 1850s, there were abolitionists that wanted to abolish slavery. And it would have been so easy to say, hey, it's been around for thousands of years. It's done on every continent. Let's just forget about it. No, there were people that were dedicated to a cause. They kept pushing, and eventually they won. And I'm of that mindset of I'm going to keep beating the drum of freedom. That's just who I am. And I view the erosion of privacy as a direct assault on my freedom because free people are not surveilled. Free people are not cataloged and um, treated as merchandise. The old expression, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. There's an uncanny parallel there. The idea of you are the product. Let's go back to South Carolina in the 1800s and slave markets. Um, people were the product back then. So I do see a parallel. I'm not saying that it's the exact same thing. I'm just saying there's a parallel. When our data is collected without our consent, when our attention is sold to people without our knowledge, our eyeballs are basically being auctioned as you're scrolling online because companies like Facebook, they know who you are. And as you're scrolling, they are doing real-time auctions with companies that are wanting ads. Facebook is in essence renting your eyeballs for a couple of seconds at a time to companies that are wanting to advertise. There are parallels. But just like the abolitionists back in the early 1800s, I'm not giving up, even if it looks like it's an uphill fight. I don't believe in giving up. And so I encourage everyone, write to your congressman. Are they going to listen to you? Maybe. Certainly not guaranteed. Some of them are not going to listen at all. But if they hear from enough of us, they will. There's an expression in politics, and it is 100% true. Politicians see the light right after they feel the heat. And if I write to my congressman, that's easy to ignore. If I get 10 people to write to my congressman, that's still easy to ignore. If I get 1,000 people to write to my congressman, they're not ignoring that. And so I just encourage people. That's what I try to do with my YouTube channel is I'm not into scare tactics. I'm not telling people that the sky is falling and we're all doomed, but I am trying to make people aware of this is what's going on behind the scenes. This is how your data is being used against you. And I'm trying to get people to realize this is a big issue and you need to speak up. So coming back to the second part of your question, there's a statement from one of our founding fathers that government is best that governs least. When we're talking about local government, your mayor, your city council, even your state representative, you're dealing with a small enough office, you can actually get a hold of that person. In Indiana, at the time I served, Indiana had a population of 6 million people, and I was one of 100 representatives. So I had 60,000 constituents. If somebody reached out to me and said, I want to meet you, will you meet me for a coffee? I want to talk to you for 20 minutes. I would make time for them. I can't guarantee that everyone will, but when you're dealing with somebody like a state representative that has tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands or millions, try and get an appointment with your U.S. senator who has 6 million constituents. It's probably not going to happen. But try to get a hold of your state representative who has 60,000, you got a much better shot. Try and get a hold of one of your city councilmen that has 10,000. Yeah, there's a real good chance you're going to get to sit down and talk to them one-on-one. So make the effort. Invite them to events. If you can get a half dozen people together and say, there are 6 of us that feel very strongly on this topic, be respectful. Because the quickest way to lose the attention of someone in office is to be overbearing and demanding, name calling, anything like that. It's instantly going to get thrown out, especially in today's environment where violence is starting to become, unfortunately, more common. They're going to be super hesitant to walk into a situation with anyone that even hints at potentially being violent. Be respectful, but reach out to them and say, I have concerns on this issue. I would really like to talk to you. There are 5 of us who are really, this is a big issue to 5 of us or 6 of us. Would you be willing to meet us at, fill in the blank, some local restaurant? Would like to sit down over a cup of coffee and talk to you about this. Those are the type of invitations. Be respectful. Also be very cautious about their time. Don't ask them for an hour or 2. They're not going to say yes. But if it's a 15, 20 minute, there's 6 of us, we would really like to talk to you for 15 minutes about this topic. Would you meet us at this neutral location? We're not inviting ourselves to your house. We're not asking you to come to our house, but let's meet out in public somewhere. That helps reassure them that they're not walking into some type of an ambush, not just a physical ambush, but if they know it's going to be in public, they're going to be much more likely to say yes. but approach them, bring the issue up, um, have someone designated who can concisely go over what your concerns are. Have a written summary of it that you can leave with them so that, if they're not sitting there taking notes, you can at least give them bullet points with some citations on it. One of the things I try very hard to do on my YouTube channel, I don't just say, hey, this is going on, this is going on. In my YouTube videos, I always say, as always, links to all of my sources are in the description. I'm an academic at heart, and that's just part of the academic research process. So typically, if you watch one of my YouTube videos and then go look at the description, I'll have 15 to 25 links to news stories that here's where I got my information from. So anyway, I encourage people, speak up, talk to your friends and neighbors, make them aware, and try to get in front of your political leaders. City council, mayor, well, depending on where you live, if it's mayor of New York, you're probably not going to meet with them, but smaller towns, you can get in front of the mayor, you can get in front of your city council, you can get in front of your state representatives. When it gets to the federal level, those are more challenging to actually get a time to meet them because they have so many constituents, but still be writing the letters. Um, the more people who write, the greater the likelihood that they're going to listen to you.
And how important is it for people to talk to their neighbors or their family or their friends about these things as well? I think a lot of the time the information we only get it from like social media or online, and so we don't really have a discourse on it.
Mm.
And I think just being able to talk about the things that we are impacted by and what we feel about it is just really important. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I cannot stress how important face-to-face conversation is, because just like we were talking about earlier, if you and I have a financial transaction with cash, it's just between the two of us. We don't have a third party moderating and recording it. The same thing is true with social media. If I post something, and I have a YouTube channel, I post things all the time, but if I post something, um, there is a possibility that the platform may disagree with me and may suppress it. Especially if it's social media. YouTube isn't quite social media, although it shares some things in common. But if I'm out on X, if I'm out on Facebook, if I'm posting something that the platform disagrees with, they can very easily make sure that only 3 people ever see that post. If somebody posts something opposite that the platform agrees with, they can make sure that 1 million people see that post. And so when a neutral person that doesn't feel strongly one way or the other goes online, they're seeing 30 posts on one side of an issue, they're seeing no post on the other side of the issue, and we're back into that spiral of silence, not because everyone's being silent, but because the platform is manipulating perception. When we go back to face, talking to your next door neighbor, talking to a coworker, there is no filtering taking place because now it is person to person and you don't have a third party making some opinions seem more prevalent and making other opinions seem less prevalent. So by all means, talk to each other in person. Um, in the event of something bad happening, and I'm getting ready to release a video on this in the next day or two, the SIM farms that the United States Secret Service found in the New York area. These are buildings that somebody had rented space in office buildings or apartments, and they had set up. We initially thought it was 100,000 SIM cards. They found some additional ones. It was 300,000 SIM cards. This is equipment that somebody spent several $1 million on. In my video that I'm working on, I looked up exactly how much this equipment cost. Somebody spent millions of dollars buying SIM cards and buying these SIM card banks to put them in. They spent money renting office space and apartments to set up this equipment. And this equipment has the ability to knock out the cell towers across a multi-mile area. And the belief is they were planning on doing this during the UN General Assembly meeting a couple of weeks ago. There's no definitive proof that was the target. But what is definitive is somebody spent millions of dollars putting this equipment in place, and it had the ability to do 2 things: mass text message everyone And when you look at how many text messages this equipment could send per minute, they could have sent text messages to the entire United States. And it has the ability to knock out cell towers. It's a denial of service attack when 300,000 SIM cards are contacting a certain geographic area. You can overwhelm the cell towers so that no one can send text messages or make phone calls. What I suspect was going to happen, and I have no inside sources on this, this is just what I've drawn looking at the media coverage. What could have happened, bad actors could have sent a very scary message, warning about some man-made incident or some natural disaster, but they could have sent out a scary message and then knocked out all the cell towers. So the last thing that you saw was a message warning you, inbound ballistic missiles, seek shelter immediately. This actually happened in Hawaii in 2018. The message was sent by error, but everyone in Hawaii got a message saying inbound ballistic missiles, seek shelter. If a scary message was sent out and then all the cell towers go down, your 500 friends on Facebook that live on the other coast aren't doing you any good. You need to know your neighbors. And I don't care if they have a bumper sticker for that other candidate the other party ran. You need to know your neighbors. I don't care if they're a different race, a different generation, a different religion. Know your neighbors. Your neighbors are the people that are going to be there to take care of each other if something breaks down in our society. And if you rely on social media for your information, the algorithms are so good at shaping people's perception. I don't want to deal with those people because those people believe fill in the blank. I'm sure some of them do believe that, not all of them. And when I look at the political divide in the United States, you know, there are people vandalizing each other's cars depending on what bumper stickers they have. If you get to know the people rather than knowing the label, you get a very different view of the world. So I really, really want to encourage people, get to know your neighbors, young, old, whatever nationality, whatever religion, it doesn't matter. Get to know your neighbors and spend more time in the real world than the online world, because the online world is so susceptible to manipulation. So that's kind of my final message for everyone. We've got to start disconnecting more often and getting a bigger percentage of our time spent back in the real world.
John, it's been great to speak with you today.
Ruben, I have enjoyed every minute of it. It's gone fast, but I have really appreciated your questions and look forward to sharing this with your audience.